Danny had been riding with the same Uber driver for 3 years. Marcus was quiet, polite, reliable, until that night when he saw the young girl being kidnapped in his car. Because Marcus Williams wasn't just an Uber driver, he was a Green Beret and human traffickers' worst nightmare. Welcome to Daily Soldier Stories. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden heroism and human trafficking justice, tell us in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who fight the darkness we never see. Downtown Chicago, 11:47 p.m. on a Friday night. The streets were alive with the usual urban symphony. Honking horns, distant sirens, the pulse of nightlife echoing between glass towers. For most people, this was when the city showed its dangerous side. For Marcus Williams, it was just another shift. Marcus had been driving for UberX for 3 years, working exclusively night shifts from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. He preferred the darkness, the anonymity, the simple transactions with passengers who just wanted to get from point A to point B without conversation. At 43 years old, Marcus looked older than his years but moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd spent 2 decades in the military. Gray hair, weathered face, calm eyes that seemed to see everything while revealing nothing. He drove a clean, well-maintained Honda Accord that blended into traffic like camouflage. Most passengers saw exactly what Marcus wanted them to see. A quiet, professional driver who knew the city, followed traffic laws, and minded his own business. They had no idea they were sitting 3 feet away from a man who'd spent 15 years with the 5th Special Forces Group, specializing in hostage rescue and counterterrorism operations in some of the world's most dangerous places. Marcus had retired from the Army 5 years ago with the rank of Master Sergeant. Officially, he'd served in Afghanistan and Iraq. Unofficially, he had operated in 17 countries conducting missions that would never appear in any public record. After leaving the military, Marcus had tried several civilian jobs: security consultant, private investigator, corporate trainer. But civilian life felt hollow compared to the mission-driven existence he'd known for 2 decades. Driving Uber gave him something he needed: purpose without politics, routine without bureaucracy, and the opportunity to help people in small ways. What his passengers didn't know was that Marcus hadn't chosen night shift driving randomly. Chicago's late-night transportation network was where predators hunted their prey. Drunk college students, stranded tourists, vulnerable women traveling alone, they were all targets for criminals who understood that desperation made people careless. Marcus had made it his unofficial mission to be a safe ride in an unsafe world. In 3 years, he'd prevented 2 sexual assaults, stopped 1 robbery, and helped 3 different women escape abusive situations. He never reported these incidents to Uber or the police. He just handled them quietly and moved on, because some habits from his Green Beret days would never die. Watch, assess, protect, act when necessary. Danny Kozloff was one of Marcus's regular passengers. A 28-year-old software developer who worked late at a tech startup downtown, Danny had been using Marcus's services 3 nights a week for almost 3 years. What had started as simple transportation had evolved into something approaching friendship. Danny would request Marcus specifically, and they developed an easy rapport during the 20-minute rides from Danny's office to his apartment in Lincoln Park. "Marcus, man, you're like the most reliable thing in my life," Danny would joke. "My girlfriend breaks up with me, my job stresses me out, but every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday night, you're here at exactly 11:30. Marcus appreciated Danny's consistency and respect. Unlike many passengers, Danny never tried to change the radio, never made calls during the ride, and always tipped appropriately. More importantly, Danny was observant. He'd noticed things about Marcus that most passengers missed. "You know, Marcus, I've been thinking," Danny said one night as they drove through downtown traffic. "You've got military written all over you. The way you check your mirrors, how you scan intersections, the way you keep your car positioned to exit quickly." "What branch?" Marcus glanced at Danny in the rearview mirror. Most passengers were too absorbed in their phones to notice his driving patterns. "Army. Long time ago. Combat. Some. Danny nodded, understanding that Marcus wasn't someone who talked about his service. "Well, for what it's worth, I feel safer riding with you than any other driver in the city." That casual comment meant more to Marcus than Danny could know. After 15 years of high-stakes operations, providing safety and peace of mind to one regular customer felt like a small but meaningful victory. What neither of them realized was that their routine Tuesday night ride was about to intersect with something much darker than either could imagine. Tuesday, March 17th, 11:25 p.m. Marcus was waiting in his usual pickup spot outside Danny's office building when his phone buzzed with a ride request. But it wasn't from Danny. The request came from Sarah, pickup location just 6 blocks away. Marcus accepted the ride. Danny was running late anyway, and this was standard procedure when regular customers weren't ready on time. Marcus drove to the pickup address, an upscale restaurant in River North. As he pulled up, he saw a young woman standing on the sidewalk, clearly distressed. She was maybe 18 or 19, blonde, wearing a cocktail dress that suggested she'd been at some kind of formal event. But something was wrong. The girl was looking over her shoulder nervously, and Marcus could see 2 men in suits standing near the restaurant entrance, watching her intently. His trained instincts immediately cataloged potential threats. The men's positioning suggested surveillance rather than coincidence. Their body language indicated they were prepared to move quickly, and the girl's behavior suggested she was trying to escape something. Marcus pulled up to the curb and rolled down his window. "Sarah?" The girl hurried to the car, glancing back at the 2 men before getting into the rear seat. "Yes, thank you for coming so quickly." As she settled into the seat, Marcus noticed several concerning details through his rearview mirror. Tears in her eyes that she was trying to hide, slight bruising on her left wrist that suggested she'd been grabbed forcefully, and most importantly, the way she kept looking back through the rear window. "Where are we headed?" Marcus asked, his voice calm and professional. Sarah hesitated, clearly uncertain. I need to get away from here. Can you just drive for a minute while I figure out where to go?" Marcus put the car in drive, but didn't move immediately. In his peripheral vision, he could see the 2 men from the restaurant walking toward the street, their attention focused on his vehicle. "Sarah," Marcus said quietly, "are you in some kind of trouble?" The girl's composure broke. Tears started flowing as she whispered, "Please, I think they're going to take me somewhere. I don't know what to do." That's when Marcus saw the black SUV pull up behind them, and everything clicked into place. This wasn't a simple ride request. This was the extraction situation, and he was the unwitting escape vehicle. Marcus's Green Beret training kicked in immediately. Assess the threat, protect the principal, execute evasion maneuvers. "Sarah, listen to me carefully," Marcus said, his voice shifting to the authoritative tone he'd used commanding Special Forces teams. "Put on your seatbelt right now. We're going to take a little ride." Marcus accelerated smoothly into traffic, checking his mirrors constantly. The black SUV immediately fell in behind them, confirming his assessment that Sarah was being pursued. "Who are those people?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking as she looked back through the rear window. "I don't know yet," Marcus replied, "but we're not going to find out tonight. Tell me exactly what happened before you called for the ride." As Marcus navigated through downtown traffic with the precision of someone trained in tactical driving, Sarah explained her situation. She'd been at a party with friends when she'd met a man who'd offered her a modeling contract. He'd insisted on taking her to dinner to discuss the opportunity, but during the meal, he'd become increasingly controlling and inappropriate. He kept talking about opportunities in other cities, about how I could make a lot of money if I was willing to be flexible, Sarah said. When I tried to leave, his friends showed up and basically surrounded me. That's when I snuck away to call for a ride. Marcus knew exactly what he was hearing. Human trafficking typically began with seemingly legitimate offers, modeling contracts, job opportunities, educational programs. Young women were lured in with promises of success and money, then gradually isolated and controlled until escape became impossible. The SUV behind them was maintaining a careful distance, probably hoping Marcus wouldn't notice the surveillance. But Marcus had been trained to detect and evade pursuit by some of the world's most sophisticated intelligence services. 3 amateur traffickers in downtown Chicago weren't even a challenge. "Sarah, I need you to trust me," Marcus said, taking a sudden right turn that caused the SUV to accelerate to keep up. "I'm going to get you away from these people, but I need to know if there's somewhere safe I can take you. Family, friends, anyone who can help." "My roommate Emily," Sarah said immediately. "She's at our apartment in Logan Square. But what if they follow us there?" Marcus smiled grimly. "They're not going to follow us anywhere." He made a series of quick turns, using techniques he'd learned during escape and evasion training. The goal wasn't to outrun the SUV, it was to force them into a tactical error that would give Marcus the advantage he needed. Marcus led the SUV through a carefully planned route that would culminate in a location where he could control the engagement on his terms. While driving, he was simultaneously coaching Sarah on what to expect and gathering intelligence about the trafficking operation. "The man who approached you, did he give you a business card? Mention a company name? Anything that might help identify him?" Sarah pulled a business card from her purse. "Michael Chen, Elite Modeling Agency." But the whole thing felt fake. Marcus memorized the information while executing a complex series of turns that would bring them to his destination. A parking garage that he'd identified months ago as tactically advantageous for exactly this type of situation. "Sarah, in about 2 minutes, I'm going to park this car and deal with the people following us. I need you to get down on the floor and stay there until I tell you it's safe." "What are you going to do?" Sarah asked, fear evident in her voice. "I'm going to remind them that kidnapping people has consequences." Marcus pulled into the parking garage and drove to the 3rd level, where concrete pillars and limited lighting would provide tactical advantages. He positioned the car so that the SUV would have to approach from a predictable direction, then turned to Sarah. "Stay down, stay quiet, and whatever you hear, don't get up until I come back for you." Marcus got out of the car and moved to a position behind a concrete pillar where he could observe the garage entrance. His military training had taught him that the key to winning any engagement was choosing when and where it happened. The SUV entered the garage cautiously, clearly aware that they'd been led into a confined space. Marcus could see 3 men inside, the 2 from the restaurant plus a driver. They parked approximately 50 feet from Marcus's car and began to exit their vehicle. Marcus stepped out from behind the pillar, hands visible but ready. "Gentlemen," he called out, his voice echoing in the concrete structure, "I think there's been a misunderstanding." The 3 men approached Marcus with the confidence of predators who'd done this before. The leader, the one Sarah had identified as Michael Chen, was well-dressed and spoke with the smooth authority of someone accustomed to intimidating victims. "Sir, there's been a mistake," Chen said. "The young lady in your car belongs to us. She's an employee who left work without permission." Marcus studied the 3 men with the tactical assessment skills he'd developed during hostage rescue operations. Chen was obviously the leader, articulate and controlling. The second man was muscle, large, intimidating, probably armed. The third was nervous, likely new to this type of operation. "Interesting," Marcus replied calmly. "She seemed to think she was being kidnapped." Chen smiled condescendingly. "Confused young girls often misunderstand business relationships. If you'll just allow us to retrieve our employee, we'll compensate you for the inconvenience." Marcus took a step closer to the 3 men, his movement casual but calculated. "What kind of business are you in exactly?" "Entertainment industry. We provide opportunities for young women to model, act, travel. Very lucrative work for the right candidates." Marcus nodded as if considering this explanation. "And if someone decides they don't want these opportunities anymore?" Chen's smile became less friendly. "That rarely happens once they understand the full scope of the benefits." That confirmed everything Marcus needed to know. These weren't legitimate businessmen. They were human traffickers using classic grooming and coercion techniques to control their victims. "Well, here's the thing," Marcus said, his voice shifting to the tone he'd used addressing enemy combatants. "I don't think Sarah wants your opportunities anymore." The large man stepped forward aggressively. "Look, old man, you don't understand what you're dealing with. Just give us the girl and walk away." Marcus smiled for the first time since the confrontation began. "Actually, I understand exactly what I'm dealing with. The question is whether you understand what you're dealing with. Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out his military ID, the same one he'd carried for 15 years of special operations. Master Sergeant Marcus Williams, 5th Special Forces Group, hostage rescue specialist, and you gentlemen just became my mission. The three traffickers stared at Marcus's military ID, their confidence evaporating as they realized they weren't dealing with a random Uber driver. Chen recovered first, but his voice had lost its smooth authority. This is a civilian matter, Chen said. Military personnel have no jurisdiction here. Marcus pocketed his ID and adjusted his stance to a more aggressive posture. You're right, this is civilian jurisdiction, which means civilian rules don't apply to me anymore. The nervous third man started backing toward the SUV, clearly wanting to retreat, but Chen gestured for him to stay in position. There are 3 of us, and 1 of you, the large man said, reaching toward something under his jacket. Marcus had been waiting for that movement. In one fluid motion, he disarmed the large man, using a technique he'd perfected during close-quarters combat training. The man's weapon, a pistol, was in Marcus's hand before anyone could react. Now there's 1 of me with a gun and 3 of you with poor life choices, Marcus said calmly. The nervous man immediately raised his hands. Look, man, we don't want any trouble. We'll just leave. Too late for that, Marcus replied. You threatened an innocent girl. You attempted kidnapping, and you're part of a human trafficking operation. Those aren't things I walk away from. Chen tried to regain control of the situation. You don't understand the scope of our organization. We have connections, protection. You can't just... Marcus cut him off. I've taken down terrorist cells in Afghanistan, drug cartels in Colombia, and arms dealers in Eastern Europe. Your little Chicago trafficking ring isn't even a warm-up. Marcus pulled out his cell phone with his free hand. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to call the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force. You're going to provide them with detailed information about your operation. Locations, personnel, victims, everything. In exchange, you get to live long enough to face trial. And if we refuse? Chen asked. Marcus's expression didn't change. Then I handle this the way I handled problems overseas, permanently. The nervous man immediately started talking. The main operation is in a warehouse on the south side. We've got maybe 15 girls there. Chen runs it with his brother and 3 other guys. Chen shot him a furious look, but it was too late. Marcus was already dialing. Special Agent Maria Rodriguez, FBI Human Trafficking Task Force. This is Master Sergeant Marcus Williams, retired. I have 3 suspects in custody and intelligence on a major trafficking operation. I need immediate backup at the following location. Within 20 minutes, the parking garage was swarming with federal agents. Special Agent Rodriguez arrived with a full tactical team, having recognized Marcus's name from military liaison reports she'd received during previous joint operations. Sergeant Williams, Agent Rodriguez said as her team secured the 3 traffickers. When I got your call, I ran your name through our database. Impressive service record. Marcus handed over the confiscated weapon and stepped back to let the professionals take over. Just happened to be in the right place at the right time, Agent Rodriguez. According to our intelligence, this trafficking ring has been operating for over 2 years. We've been trying to identify their leadership for months. Sarah had been moved to a safe location and was being interviewed by victim specialists, but not before she'd thanked Marcus repeatedly for saving her life. The suspect who provided intelligence, Rodriguez continued, gave us locations for 3 facilities and identified 11 members of the organization. This is the biggest break we've had in this case. Marcus felt the familiar satisfaction that came from mission success, but it was different this time. In the military, successful operations were measured in strategic objectives achieved and enemy capabilities degraded. Tonight's success was measured in one young woman's freedom and the potential rescue of dozens of other victims. What happens to Sarah? Marcus asked. She'll be placed in protective custody until we can roll up the entire organization. Her testimony will be crucial for prosecution. Agent Rodriguez paused, studying Marcus with the evaluation skills of someone trained to read people. Sergeant, I have to ask, are you interested in consulting work? The Bureau could use someone with your specific skill set for operations like this." Marcus considered the offer. After 3 years of driving Uber, tonight had reminded him what it felt like to have a mission that mattered, to use his training to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. "Let me think about it," Marcus said. Marcus. The FBI raid on the trafficking operations facilities happened simultaneously at 4:30 a.m. 15 young women were rescued from the warehouse and 8 members of the organization were arrested. The operation that had terrorized vulnerable women for over 2 years was completely dismantled in a single night. Marcus didn't go home after giving his statement to federal agents. Instead, he drove to a 24-hour diner on the north side and sat in a corner booth drinking coffee and processing what had happened. For 3 years, he'd been driving Uber because it gave him a sense of purpose without the complexity of his military career. Tonight had shown him that some things were more important than simplicity. His phone buzzed with a text message from Danny. "Hey Marcus, sorry I missed the ride last night. Got stuck at work late. Same time Thursday?" Marcus smiled and typed back, "Actually, I might be changing careers. I'll let you know." At 6 a.m., as his shift officially ended, Marcus drove to the FBI field office and found Agent Rodriguez still coordinating the post-operation processing. "Agent Rodriguez," Marcus said, "about that consulting offer. I'm interested." Rodriguez looked up from her paperwork with satisfaction. "I was hoping you'd say that. We have 17 active human trafficking cases in the Chicago region alone. Most of them need exactly the kind of tactical expertise you demonstrated last night." Marcus nodded. "When do I start?" "How about right now? We need someone to interview the rescued victims, help them understand they're safe. Your approach last night with Sarah, calm, authoritative, protective, that's exactly what trauma victims need to hear." Marcus had found his post-military mission, using his special operations training to fight a different kind of war, one that protected the innocent and hunted predators who operated in the shadows of American cities. 6 months later, Marcus Williams was no longer driving for Uber. Instead, he was working as a special consultant for the FBI's Human Trafficking Task Force, conducting undercover operations and tactical rescues that had freed over 100 victims and dismantled 12 criminal organizations. The work was different from his military service, but used the same core skills: observation, assessment, protection, and decisive action when innocent lives were at stake. Danny still texted him occasionally, having learned about Marcus's career change through news coverage of the trafficking arrests. "Marcus, man, I always knew you were more than just an Uber driver. Proud to know you." Sarah had testified against the trafficking organization and was now working with victim advocacy groups to help other survivors. She'd sent Marcus a card that read simply, "Thank you for seeing me when I was invisible." Agent Rodriguez had become both a colleague and a friend, someone who understood that Marcus's military training was an asset rather than a liability in civilian law enforcement. "Marcus," she said during one of their operational briefings, "in 6 months, you've achieved more results against human trafficking than some agents manage in entire careers. Have you ever considered applying to join the Bureau permanently?" Marcus smiled. "I'm exactly where I need to be, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing." Late at night, when Marcus couldn't sleep, he would sometimes drive through the neighborhoods where he'd once picked up Uber passengers. But now he was looking for different things: signs of trafficking activity, vulnerable individuals who might need help, predators who thought they were hunting in safe territory. Because Marcus Williams had learned something important during his transition from military service to civilian life. The mission never really ends, it just changes form. Whether he was rescuing hostages in Afghanistan or trafficking victims in Chicago, the core principle remained the same: protect those who cannot protect themselves, hunt those who prey on the innocent, and never, ever walk away when someone needs help. Some warriors retire from the battlefield, others simply find new battles worth fighting. Marcus Williams had found his. 1 year after the night that changed everything, Marcus received a special commendation from the FBI director for his work with the Human Trafficking Task Force. The ceremony was small, attended only by law enforcement personnel and victim advocates who understood the significance of his contributions. But the recognition that mattered most came from a different source. Marcus was leaving the FBI field office when a young woman approached him on the sidewalk. She was well-dressed, confident, carrying textbooks that suggested she was a college student. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Marcus Williams?" Marcus nodded, immediately assessing whether this was a threat or someone seeking help. "My name is Jessica. I was one of the girls you rescued from that warehouse a year ago. I just wanted to say thank you." Marcus studied her face and recognized her. She'd been one of the 15 victims rescued during the initial raid, though she looked completely different now. Healthy, strong, hopeful. "How are you doing?" Marcus asked. "I'm a sophomore at Northwestern now, studying social work. I want to help other survivors like the people who helped me." Jessica reached into her backpack and pulled out a small card. "I made this for you." The card was simple, hand-drawn, with a message written in careful script. "Thank you for reminding me that there are still good people in the world who fight for strangers." Marcus accepted the card, feeling the same satisfaction he'd experienced after successful military operations, but deeper and more personal. "Jessica," Marcus said, "you remind me why the fight is worth it." As Jessica walked away toward her college campus, Marcus realized that his post-military mission had evolved beyond what he'd originally imagined. He wasn't just rescuing victims. He was helping restore their faith in humanity, proving that evil could be defeated by ordinary people who chose to act when action was needed. Marcus Williams had spent 15 years as a Green Beret protecting American interests overseas. Now he was spending his civilian years protecting Americans at home, one rescue at a time. The uniform had changed, the battlefield had changed, but the oath remained the same, to protect and defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And sometimes those enemies drove black SUVs through Chicago, hunting vulnerable young women who had no idea that their Uber driver was their guardian angel. So now I ask you, have you ever encountered someone who seemed ordinary but turned out to be extraordinary when it mattered most? Share their story in the comments. Tell us what city you're watching from today. Subscribe to Daily Soldier Stories because every day there are heroes among us who've traded military uniforms for civilian clothes, but never stopped fighting for those who need protection. See you in the next story. And remember, sometimes the person driving your Uber isn't just getting you home safely. They're making sure you have a home to return to.